Well, how lovely to see you all. And wonderful that Veronique is here in person for our book club. So we're delighted to be featuring In the Company of Men by Véronique Tadjo, out with Hope Road Publishing, which is here. And it was the Los Angeles Times 2022 Book Prize winner for fiction. Now, there's one of the reviews describe In the Company of Men as being a poignant, timely fable which reflects on both the strength and the fragility of life and humanity's place in the world. It explores critical questions about how we cope with a global crisis and how we can combat fear and prejudice. So, my pet questions. In the Company of Men weaves together fiction, testimony and myth. What drew you to this hybrid form to tell the story of Ebola rather than reportage or a typical mainstream novel narrative following a chronological dramatic arc?
The Ebola epidemic started in 2014, and it was mainly in 3 countries in West Africa. That is, it started in Guinea, then Liberia, and then Sierra Leone. So I am from the West African region, being from Côte d'Ivoire. Storytelling, traditional storytelling, is very vibrant still in West Africa, or at least it was very vibrant when I was growing up. Mm-hmm. And so, and it's all over Africa. It's in Nigeria. I mean, it's all over Africa and elsewhere. For me, it came naturally, that sort of narrative. It falls under the umbrella of oral literature.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, because today oral literature is recognized as literature. Yeah. The beautiful thing in oral literature is that it's extremely free, and it calls on music, poetry. You can even have political discourse in it. Did I say history? So it's extremely free, and everybody talks. Everybody talks. Anybody, anything that has a vital force talks, has a voice, let's say. So the rivers, the forests, animals, human beings,
the trees,
of course, the trees. Yeah. So yes, so that's what I called on to tell the story of Ebola, because it's a harrowing story. So I had to find something that would bring in people, give them something else than just this terrible story.
Yeah. So something about how humans, we are part of it, which is very much lovely at the end. We are part of the bigger thing. Therefore, you give voice not only to the people, but to the virus, actually. That I love. There's a bit where the virus is talking. And of course, there's the animals and the baobab tree. But so this is interesting, therefore you are speaking for nature in a good way.
Yes,
I
don't talk for nature. I talk with.
You're with nature, you're
I
part
hope
of
so.
it. Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
So. We are part of it, but we are trying to forget it.
So after Ebola, then COVID, and then the climate crises now, and now there's all this social division going on. Do you still, I mean, well, we hope that global solidarity is possible, or is that rather a fading hope at the moment?
It's simple, there's no choice. There's no choice. There's no choice. Solidarity is not about charity.
No.
It's about survival. Human beings have made borders, have constructed borders, walls, anything, but they don't work. They don't work because it's one planet. So in fact, we have no choice. We have no choice. And people who are trying to hide themselves behind walls or invent artificial protections are misleading themselves. And even if we look at all the conflicts we have today, it's only solidarity that's going to put an end to it.
Well, that's my question. So now, if you would like to speak a bit more generally about the book, your work, your inspirations, over to you.
Okay. All right. So what I said, I'll just say again that I was raised in Côte d'Ivoire, but when the Ebola epidemic happened in 2014. In fact, I was living in South Africa with my family and my son here. So we were there, and I was teaching at the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg. At the beginning, it was an epidemic like any
another epidemic. They didn't
another
realize how
epidemic.
serious it was. Okay.
And then, as it started to spread in different countries, it became the major concern. People were looking at this spreading disease, and the new experts knew very well that viruses move. They cross borders.
Yeah.
So it was panic
So there was
everywhere, but a bad panic, because at one point the whole of Africa was contaminated with Ebola in people's minds. People's perceptions are very strange. So it's confined to 3 countries, but they think it's the whole of Africa, because a lot of people think Africa is one country.
No.
You'd think
It's
that
fear, isn't it? It's fear.
Yeah.
Fear does.
I was, in fact, I didn't know that I was going to write a book when the epidemic was going on. I was just obsessed with it, because being from West Africa, I was afraid that maybe it would come to Côte d'Ivoire, because we share a border with Guinea. Remember, I said to my one of my cousins, I said, let's go. I heard that there was an Ebola center that had been built in a hospital. So I said, let's go. I want to see how it looks like. But there was no Ebola yet in Côte d'Ivoire. And in fact, Côte d'Ivoire, I think, was never touched. It's amazing. But I said, I want to see the Ebola center. So we went, and it was difficult. We drove, and it was at the end of a very big hospital, the L'Hôpital de Trècheville. And then I saw this Ebola center, brand new, nobody, and I looked at it, and there was this huge tree shading the center, this huge tree, and I looked at it and said, what would this tree think if something happens? It for me, it had a protective presence, and that's how the baobab came to me. So because it was, as I say, an ongoing story, because my husband was a journalist, and so he also gave me fed me a lot of media reports and everything, and I have lots of friends who are journalists, so I had a lot of information. But it was an ongoing story, and when it's an ongoing story, you can't put a full stop. It was only when the epidemic was officially declared over that the idea came to me that I could write a book, and especially because there was a silence, a heavy silence that followed the end of the epidemic, and I was like, did I dream? Is that possible? I saw the images, I saw everything, I saw the despair, I saw the suffering. I can't just forget about it.
I wanted to also actually bring in As the Crow Flies, which is an earlier book that, which is also similarly, I know I'm suddenly jumping slightly, but anyway, this is an earlier book that was originally published, Heinemann published it, and then it's been reissued by Zeus. But that also has various voices and various points of view. Yes, and that is translated by Wangui Wagoro, who's actually here tonight, which is wonderful. And then you translated In the Company of Men with John Cullen.
There's this urge to communicate in English. And also, it's a different reception. It's very, very interesting. It's very interesting. A book is not received in the same way.
So how...
describe that a bit. Just a small example. En compagnie des hommes. That's the title in français. En français. I think the French had a little problem with it. With the book.
Oh yeah. So yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was too close to the bone for them, because that's where politics comes in. Because Guinea and France is a long story. It's a story, you know, Guinea was the first African country to say no to a community. At the beginning, the French wanted their former colonies to be gathered in one community. And Guinea was the first one to say no to that idea. And then that idea was dropped and it became the independence movement. So it's a very difficult relationship. And so with Ebola, it was a kind of an admission of failure as well.
The narrative structure was very interesting and beautiful and very engaging, but also there was so much rhyme and tempo, I thought, in the writing. It was very poetic. And I wanted to ask about like your process of sort of writing, almost like in this prose poetry mode, like how do you work with that? Like how do you create this sort of, because it is also, I assume, derives from the oral tradition, the oral poetry tradition.
Yes, I think you're right. As I said, oral literature calls on poetry heavily, and music and rhythm and so and history. So yeah, but also I think I started with poetry. My first book was a book of poems, and I think that's the genre that I like. Except that at one point I was not sure about book of poems, you know, because what I don't like about the way it's presented is that you really have to say, okay, today I'm going to read poetry, go to the poetry section. And I wanted to say that poetry is in our life everywhere. It's not the melancholic poetry or like poetry being in the air. It's a way of looking at the world.
The thing that struck me is, you know, like you were saying, you have these images of these men in space suits and things that are very kind of unnatural or sort of scary to us, but then you also have these beautiful images of sort of natural imagery and the baobab tree. How do you, or how can we reconcile with this idea of being in tune with the natural, and like you were saying, writing with nature, when we live in a world that is so sort of heavy on technology and futurism and all those kind of things?
It's a paradox.
Yeah.
It's a paradox. We live in a paradox. We've got this high tech, but we're still human beings. We still have to deal with the body, with the idea of death. We haven't solved that. So we live in a paradox. The doctor in what looked like a cosmonaut suit, he is in this very, very high tech. What do you say? Costume, not costume.
Protective,
but protective gear. But inside, he's suffering. He's perspirating. His heart he doesn't know. He's also afraid about having to approach these people who could, the slightest thing, if there's a tear in his cosmonaut suit, that's what I call, then he will catch the disease. So what struck me was this paradox of this high technology and then this man inside being so vulnerable.
During COVID, did you find that you went back to your research at all, ever? Did you link the two to get yourself through COVID in a funny way, or family?
You see, the funny thing is that the book was published in France in 2017. In 2000, there was no idea of COVID. Absolutely
That was
none.
amazing. It was
But in English, it came out in 2021, which was bomb in the middle of COVID. So in fact, I was looking at this thing and wow, and I could see now the similarities in terms in terms of the human side, the way people felt isolated,
That's the thing.
the way people felt scared about what was going to happen, the way everything. There's a lot that came, and also the nurses and medical personnel, right, in front of this huge disease. And also, what struck me was that, in fact, we tend to admire people who are in a high position, but when there is a crisis, when there is something really big, you see that it's ordinary people very often that will come to show something extraordinary, and that people you thought would be brave are not those ones. You see that in conflicts as well, in wars. You think that some people will be real cowards and do anything to escape or to walk on people to go out. But other people will rise to the occasion and become very, very, very strong. And sometimes it's ordinary people you wouldn't even have looked at in the street.
I read many years ago a book which I think was published by Gallimard about how the origin of Ebola started, and it remained in my head. It was in the village. Two young boys were sent for their initiation in the forest, and one very proudly comes back with the body of a dead gorilla he finds, and he brings it back to the village. And then people come and take it. I can't remember exactly how it goes on, but it was said that it was the origin, and though it was a novel, but it was using that as the origin of Ebola coming from this ape.
No.
Does it ring any bell to you?
Yes. I know this book. It's a book. I've read it. It's just that it's not the origin of Ebola. The virus has existed for thousands of years, and it was only discovered within brackets in 1976. Some scientists who were able to identify the virus, and they called it Ebola, the Ebola virus, because it's the name of a river in DRC, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and it was called the Ebola Zaire strain. But there are different strains in the world, even one in Asia. Yeah,
That was written.
Yeah. But what happens? No, what happens is that the bat, for example, which lives in the forest, is a healthy carrier. Healthy carrier, it means that the virus can live in the bat, but the bat is not affected. It doesn't. The bat has no problem carrying the virus. The only problem is that the virus can spread with the droppings of the bat or the blood or if people come in contact. And chimpanzees, apes can get the virus, the Ebola virus, and then it can jump to human beings. So it's not the animal itself which is the cause of the virus, but it carries. It carries.
You know, when the COVID story broke, there are all these claims of doom and gloom about how it would affect Africa, and in fact, it affected a lot of other places much worse. I mean, not least the United States of America with all the science, but a kind of scientific denying president, I guess. What do you put that down to? Is it demography? Is it the fact that, in fact, having been inured to Ebola in 3 or 4 countries now, people were just, their health systems were just better equipped to deal with this? I know that in Lagos, where I went during, when Ebola broke out in Sierra Leone and Liberia, there was a fantastic contact tracing system in Lagos. They really seemed to get it off, done really well. I wondered if you've got any thoughts about that, why Africa kind of escaped, to some extent, the sort of COVID disaster.
Okay, so a lot of things, a lot of lessons were learned from Ebola. Very, very key lessons. And now there exists the whole protocol. That means each time there is a threat, boom, the protocol is immediately activated. So in fact, funnily enough, in Africa was more prepared against COVID-19 than the West. Because people were thinking, oh my God, if COVID-19 goes to Africa, this is finished. It's going to be a disaster. But they forgot that Africa had gone through Ebola and therefore was much more prepared, because immediately it was like boom, 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 we do this, we do this, we do this, we do this. And so in that sense, Africa was more prepared to cope with this, with the virus. Whereas, unfortunately, the West was too slow to move, to act, and also too reliant on technology. Like we've got the technology, we can deal with it. It's not a problem, we can deal with it. And also taking away the people's agency. That means the government had such a heavy hand everywhere that people's agency was taken from them. You remember these terrible stories of isolation and people not being, for example, everybody knows that if a patient is sick, the best thing, when possible, but it's not to completely isolate and make that person alone and vulnerable and miserable. So there's a lot of mistakes that were done and too slow, really, really too slow. And then when they started acting, then it was panic and grabbing this, grabbing that. And I'm fascinated by the inquiry that is still going on about the COVID-19 inquiry, about looking at everything that failed. And it's amazing. It's amazing. The number of mistakes that were made.
In this country?
Yes, in this country and in France, in the States. They're all now trying to understand where did we go wrong? And it's not just one area. You have to look at many, many areas. So it's not one simple answer. Because even as I said that there's a protocol now in Africa, there's also the fact that people live outside. They're not like in the West, where you tend to be in more inside your There's the life is more outside, and also there's a question of mobility.
Well, last, wrap up.
Yes, I want to say thank you again. Thank you for being here. It's very, very nice to have exchanged with you. It's just that I think again I just want to talk about solidarity as something which is not not to be confused with charity. It's just something that we need. To be able to live in the world today, and so.
Absolutely, we've seen it actually lately with all the demonstrations. Incredible, amazing. But for me, also the big thing is listening, because it's like there are people just not listening or not wanting. There is a lot of solidarity, but not listening to each other.
It's very important.
The powers that be, and they're just not listening and not. You find it's just puzzling. Anyway,
and also that everything
not wanting to,
and also that everything is connected.
Yes,
we have a tendency to put health on one side, conflict on another side, and this on the other side. It's in fact it's all connected, and you find that things have a lot of similarities. So that's.
And thank you all for coming.